Well, hello, ladies, gentlemen, and everyone listening in to tonight's broadcast of VORW Radio International, the voice over the course of the week, giving out to you this Thursday, the 30th of October, 2025. This program is transmitted to you on the international shortwave frequency of 97.5 kHz. 300 kilowatts from Taiwan for listeners in East Asia. Thank you all so much for tuning in. I hope everyone out there listening in is feeling and doing all right. I wish you good reception conditions. Well, dear listeners, before we get into formal introductions, I do want to emphasize first and foremost, if there is any co-channel interference on 97.05 kHz, I have already gotten that worked out. The issue has been rectified, so if there is any interference this week from radio station KNLS, I have been in touch with the engineer, Mr. Amado Abinajar, and he has worked things out. So if not this week, next week, KNLS will be moving frequencies, and if there is any interference, again, it will be for this week only, but it already does look like that it's been addressed and cleared up. And I would like to sincerely extend my thanks to the folks at KNLS for really being willing to work with me through this issue and really get everything sorted out. I have to emphasize that in case anyone out there is picking up any interference, I already am aware of it, and it has been addressed and taken care of. So now into formal introductions, I'd like to introduce myself to any new listeners out there. I'd like to talk for a moment about what this program is and why I'm doing it. My name is John Jivasek. On YouTube, a YouTube channel called The Report of the Week. It has around 3 million subscribers, and it's really my livelihood these days. In addition to the work I do on YouTube, I also host this radio show, VORW, Radio International, which stands for The Voice of the Report of the Week. And this radio program I've been hosting for over a decade now. The reason why I do this program is because I truly have a passion for radio, and I think for many of you listening in, you understand that. Radio is such a dynamic and fascinating medium. It has always captivated me. It's always enthralled me. I can't help but love the medium, especially international broadcasting. And for a while it was a dream of mine to have a program of my own on international shortwave. A decade ago, I was finally able to realize that dream, and I've been at it ever since. The whole point of this program, VORW Radio International, is merely to provide a little bit of an outlet for listeners worldwide to give you a place for information and entertainment whilst never mixing the two. In this broadcast, which is 1 hour in length, I will oftentimes begin things out with the news in brief, talk a little bit about some select current events that are going on in the world around us, and then balance things out with listener music requests and even some shout-outs at that. I try to make this a fun, enjoyable, and interactive space on the airwaves, and over the years I've found that this format where, again, I begin things off with a little bit of news talk, and then get into the music thereafter, I found that works very nicely, it's very well received, and it's a lot of fun to produce as well. This is the type of broadcast you could just sit back, relax to, put on in the background, or listen intently. We're going to be in for an hour of some good music, some discussion, and as I mentioned, even some listener shout-outs as well. I will be heard at this time and frequency every Thursday for the foreseeable future, at least until February of 2026 and perhaps beyond. We'll be here on 97.05 kHz at the time of 9 hours UTC every Thursday. So again, that's 9 hours UTC every Thursday, right here on 97.05 kHz. So that's the point of the program. That's why I'm here right now. This really is just something that I wanted to do for the fun of it, for both you, the listener, and for me, the broadcaster, for the feeling, I hope anyway, is mutual. And like I said, this is just something that I wanted to do because I love the medium. I still believe in it. I still know that there are people out there tuning in. So this is just a little bit of a celebration, you can say, of radio, and just a good time all around. With the introductions out of the way, dear listeners, please stay tuned. The news is next. Hurricane Melissa left dozens dead and widespread destruction across Cuba, Haiti, and Jamaica, where roofless homes, toppled utility poles, and waterlogged furniture dominated the landscape on Wednesday. A landslide blocked the main roads of Santa Cruz in Jamaica's St. Elizabeth Parish, where the streets were reduced to mud pits. Residents swept water from homes as they tried to salvage belongings. Wind ripped off part of the roof at a high school that serves as a public shelter. I've never seen anything like this in all my years living here, resident Jennifer Small said. Hurricane Melissa reared landfall Tuesday in Jamaica as a catastrophic Category 5 storm with top winds of 185 miles per hour, one of the strongest Atlantic hurricanes on record, before weakening and moving on to Cuba. But even countries outside the direct path of the massive storm felt its devastating effects. At least 23 people have died across Haiti and 13 are missing, Haiti's Civil Protection Agency said in a statement. In Cuba, officials reported collapsed houses, blocked mountain roads, and roofs blown off buildings on Wednesday, with the heaviest destruction concentrated in the southeast of Cuba. In Jamaica, more than 25,000 people were packed into shelters Wednesday, and more streamed in throughout the day after the storm ripped roofs off their homes and left them temporarily homeless. Dana Morris-Dixon, Jamaica's education minister, said 77% of the island was without power. Outages complicated assessing the damage because of a telecommunications blackout in areas, commented Richard Thompson, acting Director General of Jamaica's Office of Disaster Preparedness and Emergency Management, in an interview with the nationwide news network radio station. Prime Minister Andrew Holness said in a statement, our teams are working to rescue people and bring relief where it is needed the most. Recovery will take time, but the government is fully mobilized, he said. Relief supplies are being prepared. We are doing everything possible to restore normalcy quickly. Officials in Black River, Jamaica, a coastal town of approximately 5,000 people, the southwestern part of the island, pleaded for aid at a news conference Wednesday. Catastrophic is a mild term based on what they are observing, Mayor Richard Solomon said. Solomon added, the local rescue infrastructures had been demolished by the storm. The hospital, police units, and emergency services were inundated by floods and unable to conduct any emergency operations. Wednesday afternoon, Melissa had top sustained winds of 100 miles per hour and was moving northeast at 15 miles per hour, according to the U.S. National Hurricane Center in Miami. The hurricane was centered 110 miles south-southeast of the Central Bahamas. Michael Brennan, director of the National Hurricane Center, said the storm began affecting the southeastern Bahamas on Wednesday. Authorities in the Bahamas were evacuating dozens of people from the archipelago's southeast corner ahead of the storm's arrival. Melissa sent in its forecast to move through the southeastern Bahamas on Thursday. By late Thursday, Melissa is expected to pass just west of Bermuda. an update on Hurricane Melissa. This was truly a historic storm in the worst way. This hit Jamaica at record strength, the strongest system ever recorded in modern history to make landfall in the island of Jamaica. The central pressure at landfall was 892 millibars, sustained winds of 185 miles per hour, with gusts well over 200 miles per hour. Unimaginable destruction in the areas that were impacted by the landfall directly, and it's not looking good. There is still no communication from many of the towns and villages that the eye passed over during landfall. One is really only left to guess at where things really stand as far as the actual scope and scale of the destruction is concerned. It's very likely that a clearer picture will emerge in the coming days, and I sincerely hope and pray for the best for everyone out there in Jamaica and Cuba. I know things are difficult, but I really wish them the very best. I know a lot of people out there are. Moving next to South Asia, tensions are still high between Pakistan and Afghanistan. There is dialogue, but the future is uncertain. Pakistan's defense minister said on Saturday he believes Afghanistan wants peace, but the failure to reach an agreement during talks in Istanbul would mean open war, days after both sides agreed to a ceasefire following deadly border clashes. The talks in Istanbul, which began on Saturday and have continued through the weekend, mark the latest attempt by Pakistan and Afghanistan to prevent a relapse into violence after the worst border fighting since the Taliban's 2021 takeover of Kabul. The talks are meant to devise a mechanism to enforce the Doha ceasefire longer term. Khawaja Mohammed Asif said that there had been no incidents in the 4 to 5 days since it was agreed that both sides have been complying with the new truce. We have the option, if no agreement takes place, we have an open war with them, he said in a televised remark in Pakistan, but I saw that they want peace. The clashes erupted earlier this month after Islamabad demanded that the Taliban curb militants instead of attacking Pakistan from sanctuary inside Afghanistan. Pakistan launched airstrikes across the border and both sides exchanged heavy fire, killing dozens and prompting the closure of key crossings that still remain shut. Islamabad accuses Kabul of sheltering these militants who target Pakistani forces. The Taliban rejects the charge and says it is Pakistan's military which is violating Afghan sovereignty. So this situation, as confusing it may be, because for those of you, there was a time, not even too long ago, when Afghanistan and Pakistan were allies, and now all of a sudden they're fighting, there's talk of open war. What exactly happened? In these sorts of situations, you have all types of different factions out there. And of course, when governments change, you have different ideologies that prevail, etc. So while there was a time when the Taliban and Pakistan were on better terms, things have changed. This is over 20 years ago now. And you have a group now inside of Pakistan that's called the Pakistan Taliban, which is pretty easy to remember. They are considered by Pakistan's current government to be a terrorist group. And Pakistan is accusing Afghanistan of harboring these militants. They say that Afghanistan is providing them sanctuary, arming them, that they're training them, and then sending them across the border into Pakistan, where they then launch terrorist attacks on the Pakistani government. So that's where this border dispute and these clashes come from. Pakistan wants this to stop. Afghanistan is saying, well, we have nothing to do with this. and it's working well. The most surprising aspect of these latest developments is really the fact that this ceasefire actually seems to be holding, because the initial ceasefire was very poorly kept, and there were violations of it non-stop over occurring. So it's really remarkable that at least for the last 4 days now, there have really been no violations reported whatsoever. And even in the broader sense, there hasn't been much in the last week, but especially these last few days, things have really quieted down. Hopefully they'll stay that way, but we will see what happens as far as these discussions are concerned. We don't really know what's been going on behind the scenes. This is just what's publicly available. A lot of talk, not a lot of action, though, is what could be said definitively. This is one of those stories that caught my eye simply because of how strange it is, and especially when I saw the number involved here. It's really what got me looking into this more. Situations and sort of statues, you wonder how did this even happen, after which perhaps you never know. And at least everyone is okay at the end of this, and at least if there has been a recovery. But this is from New Zealand. It says, a boy who swallowed up to 100 high-powered magnets purchased online has undergone a major surgery to remove them. After 4 days, the stomach pain, the 13-year-old boy was admitted to Tauranga Hospital in New Zealand's North Island, where doctors discovered the magnets had joined together to form 4 chains inside his intestines. Surgeons were able to extract the magnets and remove parts of the boy's damaged intestines, according to a report by doctors at the hospital, published Friday in the New Zealand Medical Journal. The boy, who has remained anonymous in the report, has allegedly swallowed approximately 80 to 100 high-power neodymium magnets a week prior to his hospitalization, the doctor said. He was discharged after spending 8 days in the hospital and has recovered. New Zealand banned the sale of these small high-powered magnets in 2013 after the government warned that children could suffer serious injury if they swallowed magnets, whether out of curiosity or while playing with them as mock jewelry. Magnets tend to be marketed at adults as office toys, and many brands carry strict safety warnings. It is clear from the cases here and overseas that they pose great risk to children too. Simon Burgess, the New Zealand Consumer Affairs Minister, said in a statement, citing previous child hospitalizations in the U.S. and Australia. Authors of the New Zealand Medical Journal report have noted that enforcing the long-standing ban remains challenging, as the magnets can easily be purchased through online marketplaces. While these laws can be enforced locally, it is more difficult to regulate products supplied by overseas merchants on large-scale online marketplaces, the author said. These platforms are easily accessible, especially by children, with purchases being inexpensive and not always requiring age verification, they added. The report said that the magnets had been purchased via the Chinese online marketplace, Temu. In a statement to NBC News, Temu said it has not been able to confirm whether the magnets in question were indeed purchased through the platform that the report states. We are, however, sorry to learn about the incident and wish the boy a full and speedy recovery, a spokesperson from the company said. We take product safety very seriously. So this is one of those situations that at least the boy was able to make a recovery, but this was obviously a very serious operation that occurred. It is quite unfortunate that some of his intestines did need to be removed, but obviously when he was in severe pain and had so many of these magnets in his system, there is a picture of them that is available in the article, and they do look fairly small, so it's easily how they could be swallowed. complications. So I'm glad that these things are able to be removed. It's understandable, despite these sorts of bans on them, because people can actually, it's nearly impossible to even enforce such measures when they're unbelievably attainable magnets. It's one of these things that we need to come down to the discussion. Dear listeners, that's the latest news from VORW Radio International. There wasn't a tremendous amount in the news tonight, so for the rest of the hour, we're going to balance out the remainder of the program with listeners' music requests. So we're going to have a chance to catch up on some music. I can say a good deal of requests tonight. We're going to give some shout-outs in the broadcast. But, as always, I do need to mention and emphasize, first and foremost, no analytics for this transmission. That means, as always, I have no statistics, no metrics, no way of knowing if there is anyone out there listening to this broadcast right now. No view count, nothing. You as a listener, completely and totally anonymous. I always say that there's 10 people, 100, 1,000, 10,000 or more listening in, and I am wiser. If you ever have time to actually turn your own on anything, that's perfectly fine by me. But as a broadcaster, I do need to know that someone somewhere is listening in. Just to hear my voice, I do this for you to listen. I have to know the audience being reached. And the only means I have to know anyone's listening is through direct correspondence. You have to let me know you're out there listening in. You obviously, if you prefer not, you don't have to, but it would be great to hear from you. You could send in a short email simply to say, hi, I'm listening in. And it's a lot of fun to hear from listeners, and of course it helps tremendously. That way I know people are out there actually hearing the broadcast. If you send in a reception report, let me know how the signal is coming through on your end. You can let me know whereabouts in the country or in the world you are receiving the broadcast. Likewise, I mentioned music requests, and I'll be playing plenty of them. If there is a song you would like to hear played in the broadcast, I am very eager to come from the music played, any title, any artist, any genre, any era, any song. I will note it down, try to the best of my ability to do this to you. But it's up to you in the end. Maybe go to the next song that's playing. The choice is yours. Of course, you've also talked about email. About the email address. And also none of these would make any sense. But here's how you can write in if you are listening in. You will send an email to We'd like to hear the selection Have a Cigar by Pink Floyd. Cigar, third track on Pink Floyd's 1975 album, Wish You Were Here. It follows Welcome to the Machine, and on the original LP, opens Side C. At some markets, the song was issued as a single. English folk rock singer Roy Harper provided lead vocals on phone. It is one of only three Pink Floyd recordings with a guest singer on lead vocals, the old being The Great Big in the Sky and Hey Hey Rise Up. If you're tuned into the broadcast right now, the reception report keeps your feedback. Your music requests are welcome to VORW@gmail.com. Edit shall be time to push it in. Writing in, he'd like for any selection from Grand Funk Railroad, Let's Go, We're an American Band. here on VORW Radio International. First request going out to Mika in Tennessee. Measurement by American Football. Preceding that for Eric in Shelby Township, Michigan. Rear and American Band. Song by American Rock Band Ramsey's Railroad. Released on July 5th, 1973, from the band's album of the same name. It became the band's first single to top the Billboard chart. It was written by Don Brewer and produced by Todd Rundgren. Its huge chart success broadens brand appeal. In a 2023 interview, Brewer said the song, which stitches together snippets of events from the band's touring life, was written in an effort to garner the band more hits, affecting radio stations with transitioning into single-oriented format. You're listening to this broadcast right now. Any reception report, pieces of feedback, music requests, all are welcome. Feel free to write in if you're listening in. VORWINFO@gmail.com. We hear from Bruce, listening north of Chicago, Illinois. He'd like to hear the selection Don't Look Back in Anger by Oasis. live in Midwest City, Oklahoma. I am a scientist. I guided, I voices. Well, like I said I would, let's open up the email right now. VORWINFO@gmail.com. Say hello to listeners tuned into the broadcast tonight. I'd like to give a shout out to Robbie in East Windsor, New Jersey, listening in on WWCR. So thank you for taking the time to report the news. That sounds great over here. Hello to Tacloban, listening in the Metro Detroit, Michigan area on 4840 kHz. Good signal. Jared in Clifton, New Jersey. Reception is great on my end. Listening in right now. Cathedral, regular listener, checking in. Gregory in San Antonio, Texas is tuned in, so thank you and keep up the good work. Great to hear from you out there in San Antonio. Hello to Tyler listening in. Says, I'm a first-time listener. It feels like old school radio in the best way. Thank you for your kind words, Tyler. Shout out to Jeff listening in from Panama City Beach, Florida, getting a very good signal tonight on his 1956 Ireland HQ-150 receiver over S9 space. A really good signal over there in the Florida Panhandle. We hear from Gabriella listening in from San Diego, California. First time listener. Hello to Craig in El Paso, Texas. Catching a broadcast on 4840 kHz. Second reception report. Miles in Washington, D.C. is checking in. We hear from Megan, tuned in from Chicago, Illinois. Since the broadcast sounds great. Greetings to Alex listening in from Akron, Georgia. Getting a good signal as well. Austin in southern Ontario, Canada is catching the station tonight on his SWL receiver. Greetings to Brian listening in from the San Francisco Bay Area of California. And also hear from Geoffrey, listening from a small town in southeast Belgium. Tuned in. Good to hear from listeners over there in Europe. Hello to Jim in Santa Ynez, California, listening in. 9+10 reception. Going over to the East Coast, we hear from Jen, listening in from Connecticut on 4840 kHz. Taking this to Ethan in Tucson, Arizona. So I just gotta say, great program. Thank you, Ethan. Hello to Trevor, regular listener in Rancho Cucamonga, California. So I'm enjoying the program, tuning in, really enjoy the variety and thoughtfulness it brings to each broadcast. Trevor, thank you for your listenership and kind words. Greetings to Jeannie in Harmony, Pennsylvania, listening in on a Texan PLS-80 receiver on 4840 kHz. I'd like to say hello to Joanne in San Diego, California, listening on 4840 kHz. Hello to Patricia in Iowa, tuning in on 4840. And I got this email the other week. I would like to say hello to Andre, who listens into the broadcast from Mexico. Actually, a relative of his, Felipe, who wrote in, and they said that he tunes in on 15770 kHz and 5950 kHz, but has no internet access or other source. Really appreciate the broadcast. He tunes in for the news and information, and the emails I've got are so encouraging to hear, and makes doing it all the more worth it. So a big shout out there to Andre, tuned in regularly in Mexico, and it's really one of the beautiful things about shortwave. You can reach calls anywhere, even if there is no internet access whatsoever. The signal still gets through. You can still listen in, and for any listeners out there who don't have any internet access, you can rest assured that I truly believe in this medium and we broadcast honest going anywhere. Huge thank you to everyone out there tuned into the broadcast tonight. It's such a pleasure to have you all listening in. Dear listeners, if you enjoyed this broadcast and would like to hear more of it, the next time you can catch the transmission will be on Thursday. That's Thursday, the 6th of November, 2025, at the time of 9 hours UTC. That's 09 hours UTC. on the international shortwave frequency of 9705 kHz. That's 9705 kHz. 9.705 megahertz on the 31-meter band. If you have any final reception report and like a QSL card, or would like a broadcast schedule in writing, you can send an email to VORWINFO@gmail.com. I will be happy to help you out. That's all for tonight. Until next time, be safe, be healthy, and I wish you all the very best. Take care, this is VORW.